You can learn to read tarot. If you've never done it before, it may seem incredibly intimidating. There are 78 cards, and they've all got their own symbols, their own meanings, and their own nuances. Maybe you've tried learning before, and you just got overwhelmed, or maybe you found a lot of contradictory information. That's okay. I'm going to show you an easy way to read tarot, to pull their meanings and to put them together in a reading. I'm also going to show you a couple mistakes and misconceptions about reading tarot and how you can avoid letting those negatively affect your learning. My name is Henry Alexander, and this is the Book of Mirrors. If you're streaming this as a podcast, we will be referring to some images. You can find those in the show notes, or you can go to bookofmirrorspc.com. If you've ever studied the tarot before, you probably ran into the same problems that I did when I started learning. Because of my Virgo rising, I would read books and take notes on every single card. Once I finished, I would start another book, take notes on those cards again, and I would start to compile a bunch of different notes for each card. Sounds great in theory, except there's a lot of interpretation that goes on with the tarot. And as you start collecting these descriptions and these definitions, things start to contradict each other. You also start to get shifts in meaning. Some things kind of mean something, and then they kind of mean the opposite. It gets very confusing very quickly. If you don't have a full theory of understanding, it almost makes reading tarot impossible. And that is where most people quit when it comes to reading tarot. Most people get completely overwhelmed with all these definitions, with these reversals and these nuances with the suits and numbers, and then there are cards with people on them, and then there's some cards with no people on them. It's a lot to learn. And most people think that you have to go through and memorize everything. That is not true. There is a way to learn to read tarot without memorization. The solution to this problem is learning intuitive tarot reading. This is a very easy technique that you can use, and it'll help you pull the meanings out of cards that you're unfamiliar with or cards that you've never seen before. It's a very simple process that doesn't take long to master. Additionally, it also helps you develop your own personal meanings for cards and create a very strong connection that changes not just your interpretations of cards, but makes your readings for yourself and for other people wholly unique to you. It's these personal, unique connections to the cards that make people swear by certain tarot readers and avoid other ones. It's a very personal, introspective practice. And this is a way not just to get in touch with the cards, but to also get in touch with deeper aspects of yourself. For this entire series, we're going to be using the Rider Waite Smith deck. This is largely considered the standard tarot deck. Most decks, if you go into a store, will be based on the Rider Waite Smith deck, about 90%. There are decks that change in artistic style or designs, but largely they still have a lot in common in terms of imagery. Under the guidance of Arthur Edward Waite, an occultist and member of the Golden Dawn, the artist Pamela Colman Smith created the artwork for his new tarot deck. Tarot has existed in some form since the 1400s, but it wasn't until around the early 20th century that Arthur Edward Waite decided to create his own unique tarot deck. He enlisted the help of Pamela Colman Smith, a psychic and an artist who was also another member of the Golden Dawn. He gave her instruction on one half of the tarot deck, the major arcana. These are the big life events. Arcana, Latin for secrets. These are the big secrets, the big things that everyone encounters at some point in their lives. He told her what imagery to use, what symbols to include, and she went ahead and created this artwork, which most people find immediately recognizable. What made this deck special was the minor arcana. These tend to be things that cover our day-to-day encounters. Traditionally, these cards just contained geometric patterns. not unlike our modern day playing cards. If you got an 8 of spades, it has 8 spades on it. In the tarot deck, if you got an 8 of pentacles, it had 8 pentacles on it. Pamela Coleman Smith did something a little different. Instead of doing these geometric patterns, she took it upon herself to create individual artwork for every single card. Each of these has a different scene on it with different characters, doing something different, encountering a different struggle, or celebrating a different success. These images brought new life to the tarot, and the deck ended up being far more popular than Arthur Edward Waite had anticipated. Now, no one really knows for sure where Pamela Coleman Smith got the ideas for the minor arcana cards. Some say that it was part of her being psychic. Some say that it was her own interpretations of what each card meant. Regardless, these scenes have become almost the standard for tarot decks. And it's because of their heavy symbolism that we use them for intuitive tarot reading. We also need to make note of what the decks are called. Originally, these were called Rider Waite tarot decks. Rider being the publisher, and then Waite referring to Arthur Edward Waite. Pamela Coleman Smith was not included in the naming process. Most people attribute this to her being a woman. Fortunately for us, she signed every piece of art that went into this deck. So if you see a little squiggle that kind of resembles a P and a C and an S, that's Pamela Coleman Smith's initials. In more recent years, readers have taken to calling the deck the Waite Smith deck or the Rider Waite Smith deck to honor Pamela Coleman Smith and her contribution to these decks and the overall popularity of tarot today. Now, let's go ahead and discuss symbolism used in the tarot. The important thing to know about symbolism is that meanings are not universal. Most people think certain things always represent other things. For example, most people interpret roses to mean love or affection. Well, that may be true for some, but for others it may not be. Here's an example. Let's say that I have a grandmother who loved roses, had a rose garden, had roses in her house. Here's where I'll show you another way that your personal interpretation can differ from the, quote, widely accepted interpretations. Now, let's say that grandmother was cruel. She was mean to everyone she knew. To me, my family members, we couldn't take her to restaurants because she would berate the waitstaff and other customers. Let's just say no one came to her funeral when she died. Now, I personally would interpret roses completely differently than someone else who associates them with love. I would probably associate them with anger or insecurity or hatred or frustration. That is a personal connection for me. I should note, this is not my actual grandmother. I love my grandmothers, and they're both incredible women. But for the sake of the scenario, you can see how the meaning of a symbol can change from person to person. And that's something that we need to keep in mind because that's going to change how we read certain cards. To read tarot, we're tuning into our intuition and our core memories. We're asking introspective questions about what we feel and why we feel that way. I don't have the authority to say this, but I'm going to say it because some people need to hear it. You cannot misinterpret a card. If you're being honest and open with yourself and your feelings, then you will read a card correctly. So you don't need to be insecure or scared of misreading a card. If you draw a card and you have a strong feeling that it represents one thing, stick to it. Don't try to force some other belief into what that card is. You also need to remember that cards can change meaning depending on the context, how they make you feel in a particular moment. I've done readings where I'll pull a card that I've seen 1,000 times, but for some reason I interpret it differently that time. I just get a feeling that it means something different. And then I do the rest of the reading, and lo and behold, when I start talking to my querent about how they thought everything went, that's the one card that they focus on. That one novel meaning. That's the thing that connected all the dots. And I've told people before, I don't normally interpret a card that way. I just felt like it meant something different this time. And that's okay. You do not have to stick to the exact same meaning for a card every single time you read it. Your meanings are allowed to change. They're going to naturally over time. As you see cards paired with other cards in new contexts, you're going to start recognizing different things about them. And that's going to change how you feel about them and how you interpret them. This is one reason that AI won't replace tarot card readers. There's a science and an art to reading the tarot. That art comes from the soul, comes from the intuition, comes from your own thought processes and the things that you're passionate about. We as human beings can look at the same painting and feel completely differently about it. We can read the same book and have completely opposite opinions over it. That's okay. Reading tarot is a way to get in touch with your humanity. And our humanity is fluid. It changes. Accept it. The sooner you do, the easier this will be. With what we've discussed, let's go ahead and break down a tarot card. We'll start with one, the common interpretation of it, to see if we can come to that conclusion on our own. I'm also going to give you a different interpretation of that same card using the exact same imagery and symbols to show you how you can interpret things differently, but they can still be correct. To do this, we're going to go ahead and look at a very famous card, the Magician. Now, as I mentioned previously, there are two sets of cards in the tarot. The major arcana, the big secrets, and the minor arcana, the little minor secrets. At first glance, it's easy to tell which kind of card you're dealing with. The major arcana are usually numbered at the top. The major arcana also have individual names. Here we have the Magician, but there's also ones such as the Fool, the Chariot, the World, the High Priestess, Death, the Tower. Again, all of these represent big, major life events. The minor arcana represents the day-to-day things, the minor events in life. These ones are broken up by suit. We have 4 suits: pentacles, cups, wands, and swords. Suits and their meanings in future episodes. These minor arcana cards are very similar to our modern day playing cards. Each suit has 10 numbered cards, going from ace to 10. Then there are 4 court cards. These are depicted as different people of the suit. You'll have a page, a knight, a queen, and finally a king. So for example, you could have a page of pentacles, a knight of wands, a queen of cups, and a king of swords. Our example card is going to be the Magician. He does not have a suit, and he has an individual name. That's how we know that he is part of the major arcana. As a side note, different people will pronounce that differently. Some say arcana, some say arcana. It really doesn't matter. You can ask 10 different readers and you'll get 13 different answers. Now, with our card, let's break it down symbol by symbol. Before we get into our deep dive of the Magician card, if you're enjoying this so far, make sure that you subscribe, follow Book of Mirrors on Twitter, Instagram, and wherever you're listening to this podcast. All right, let's go ahead and break this card down symbol by symbol and see if we can use all of this information to get a general meaning of the card that we could use for a reading. Notice on this card is the infinity symbol above the Magician's head. We know what infinity means. It goes on forever and there's no limit. But we don't know what this is referring to. This could be referring to infinite thoughts, infinite ideas, infinite potential, something having to do with some kind of upper cognitive, mental, spiritual function. Next, let's take a look at what he's wearing. He's wearing two major colors, white, red. For many people, white means purity, honesty, openness, cleanliness. Red can mean love or power or lust. In some cultures, red and white also represent the masculine and the feminine, so those are paired together. Remember, neither of these interpretations are wrong. You can do well with both of them. You'll still get a good meaning for the card. Whichever interpretation you choose informs your interpretation of the card and how it's used in a reading. So it could be a mix of masculine and feminine, of purity and energy. It could just represent balance. We will be talking a lot about different colors and what they represent, but it's important to recognize that colors and what they represent are incredibly culturally dependent. In North America, in the United States, green is the color of our money, but many countries have different colored money. So green isn't always associated with wealth, specifically financial wealth. So if a color means something different to you, that's okay. Go with what it means to you, not with what you think it should mean. The next thing we want to look at is what's around his waist. He has a snake wrapped around its waist, biting its own tail, which he's wearing as a belt. This is a common symbol, the Ouroboros. It's usually seen as a serpent eating its own tail, and often represents either infinity or a closed system, such as the universe. Energy does not leave or come into it, it's completely enclosed. You could interpret this as a cycle, life and death, perhaps, or a closed system, or control. We need to start asking ourselves some WH questions. So, who is this magician? We can ask, why is there a snake around his waist? How did he get it there? Why isn't it trying to get away? Where did it come from? Each of those questions is going to help us get more information about the card. And to answer those questions, we're going to have to look within ourselves and come up with answers for it. It's going to feel like you're making things up, and that's okay, because on some level you are. It's also important to note that snakes are often considered dangerous animals. And yet, this man is able to wear a dangerous, potentially venomous animal around his waist as if it's nothing. Think of most belts. They're made out of leather, something that was alive but is now deemed harmless. Does he consider this potentially dangerous snake to be completely harmless? What does that say about the magician? Now let's look at his hands. Where are they? He has one hand pointing down towards the ground, and in the other hand, he's holding a baton. With it, he's pointing up towards the sky. Let's go back to our WH questions and start asking, why is he pointing up and down at the same time? What do up and down mean to different people? He could be talking about the heavens and the earth. There's a common Hermetic phrase that goes, as above, so below. And what that tends to refer to is that the macrocosm, the greater universe, the planets and how they work, mirrors the microcosm, how we work. As individuals, we go through cycles, we have processes that mirror the planets. Is he telling us about this cycle? Is he telling us about this connection? Or maybe we could go in a more Judeo-Christian route. Is he pointing to heaven and pointing to hell? Is he warning us about something? Or is he trying to convince us about something? Why is he pointing? What is he pointing to? And who is he pointing for? Remember, how you answer these questions are going to be part of your interpretation, so feel free to answer them with your honest opinion. Now we're going to get into a fun area, the table in front of him. He's got 4 items there, all of which are within arm's reach. It's important to note that. He has access to these 4 items, and he can choose to use them if he wants. He has 4 things there. He has a sword, a wand, a pentacle, and a cup. If you've been listening carefully, you may have recognized a few of those items. Those are the items that represent the 4 suits in the minor arcana. Now, there are different philosophies over what these different suits represent. There are elemental or earthly philosophies. There are psychological models. There are spiritual models. We'll go more in depth on these in future episodes. Right now, I'll just give you a couple words so you can associate them. The pentacle usually represents the earthly or physical aspects of life, usually money or health. These correspond with the element of earth. The cups tend to correspond with the element of water. These represent intuition and feelings, our emotions, which can ebb and flow. The wands represent fire, initiative, drive, and passion, the energy we need to do what we want to do. And finally, the sword. The sword represents the mind, the intellect, ideas, and communication. Now let's ask some of those WH questions. Why are they there? Who put them there? Why isn't he using them? They're laid out, but he's not using them yet. What does he have in mind? What is he waiting for? One more thing that I want to talk about. Another thing we want to look at are the flowers around him. He's surrounded by roses and lilies. As we mentioned before, roses often represent love or desire. And lilies, for some people, represent death and mourning and letting go. Roses, you know that they are nearly impossible to keep alive. I somehow find roses that will die faster than anything else when I buy them. Roses, to me, represent something very fragile, something very fleeting. Roses are a sign that life is delicate and we need to treasure it. Lilies, however, have another meaning for me. To me, lilies represent intuition, kindness, compassion, and gentle guidance. This goes back to a story that I heard about Mickey Mouse. Walt Disney was designing his new cartoon character, and he decided to name him Mortimer Mouse. His wife, Lillian Disney, didn't agree with that name choice. She said, if you want to create an endearing character, don't name him Mortimer. Choose something nicer, like Mickey, which he did. And I think we all know who's the favorite, Mickey Mouse or Mortimer Mouse. The last thing we want to note is the number at the very top of this card. Now, we will cover numerology of the tarot in a later episode, but right now, you just need to know that for me, ones represent the beginning of something new, the start, the inception of something, the idea and the inspiration to do something. That is the number of the magician. So let's go ahead and put all these things together and see if we can get a meaning for the magician card. He is very knowledgeable. He's pointing to the sky and to the ground. He's putting on a big show. He's got an infinite amount of something. He has all the tools of existence laid out in front of him. But it's important to note, he hasn't actually used them. He hasn't constructed anything. There's no trick that's been done. The magician has yet to actually act. He is surrounded by life and death, but it's all in a very beautiful, performative way. Which are the flowers? Flowers are gorgeous, but they don't serve any other function to people. So now I'll tell you what the common interpretation of this card is. The magician is the embodiment of potential. He is the idea man. He has all the skills necessary to create whatever he wants. He is able to manifest anything his heart desires. Again, it's important to notice that he hasn't actually done it yet. He's in that stage of wishing and thinking and coming up with the idea. This is a card of manifestation and readiness, but it's not a card of achievement and completion. The magician can do anything. He has infinite potential, yet to actually do anything. Now, if you didn't get that exact meaning, that's okay. I'm going to show you how you could use these exact same symbols and interpretations to come up with a different meaning for the magician, and it would still be right. It is still something that will give you good insight in a reading. Let's think about the name itself, the magician. When people talk about magicians, they're usually talking about stage performers, people who do sleight of hand or illusions. And these performers, we know, don't have any actual magical power. They're tricksters, showmen. We expect them to do something entertaining that has no substance to it. So what kind of person might it take to do something like that? Maybe someone who's deceptive or manipulative. What about that infinity symbol? Could that mean that he has infinite lies, infinite tales that he might tell to manipulate someone? He has infinite ideas of how to take money out of people's pockets. Let's think about that snake. Do we know that it's real? It could be fake. It could be part of his costume to make him look more daring and more dangerous than he actually is. Let's look at those tools. The wand, the sword, the cup, the pentacles. Are these tools that he uses for good, or are they things that he could use to manipulate people? Could he play into someone's emotions with the cup? Could he maybe blackmail someone with the pentacle? Could he outwit someone with the sword? Not all tools are used for good. Sometimes tools can be used as weapons to harm other people. And let's think about those flowers. What do people tend to throw on stage after a performance? Flowers. Has he just completed some show for someone who doesn't know any better, and now they're praising him? In this regard, the magician could be a trickster, a liar, someone who has a lot of potential to do good things but is making poor choices. This could be someone who's manipulative, someone who seems to have all the answers when really they're just faking their way to the top. You could combine both of these interpretations too, to maybe come up with someone who has imposter syndrome, someone with full potential and all the tools they need, but they don't feel like they've earned what they have. All three of these interpretations are valid, and they will give you good insight in a reading. There are a couple things that I still want to remind you of. You cannot misinterpret a card if you come to your conclusion genuinely and you use your intuition. If you're sincere and you're introspective, the meaning that you pull for the card is going to be the true meaning that you need right there in that moment. Remember, a tarot reading is a collaborative process. It's unique depending on the reader, the objective spread of the cards, where they line up, where the cards line up in a spread, and the querent, the person that you're doing the reading for, who may or may not be you. These three factors work together to get an overall meaning for the reading. Remember, trust your feelings. Your intuition is going to guide you. All you have to do is listen to it. If you want more resources on this specific type of tarot reading, there are a couple that you can look into. The go-to book for tarot reading is 78 Degrees of Wisdom by Rachel Pollack. That is considered the quintessential book for learning the tarot. If you're looking for podcasts, you can check out Tarot for the Wild Soul, hosted by Lindsay Mack. You can try the Biddy Tarot podcast, hosted by Bridget Esselmont, or Between the Worlds, hosted by the pair Amanda Yates Garcia and Carolyn Pennypacker Riggs. Each of these goes about tarot in a different style. However, if you're enjoying this way of learning, then I encourage you to follow or subscribe to the Book of Mirrors podcast. In our future episodes, we're going to go into the different suits of the minor arcana, the numerology of the tarot, and we're going to break down each card individually. Again, I'm Henry Alexander, and this is the Book of Mirrors.